Okay, I'm gonna attempt to walk through all of these decks layer by layer, one by one. Hello, I'm Chingai. If you don't already know me, I'm the person behind practicalmagic.co. I'm a tarot reader, a tarot deck creator, a podcast host, and an author. Today I'm gonna walk you through all the decks in my tarot collection. My house went through a fire last year, so I decided to cull a couple of decks from my collection, and these are the ones that stayed. First up, I have the Fairy Tale Fortune cards. Before I started tarot, I was actually into Lenormand, and that whole Lenormand thing started because I saw these cards in Fully Booked in Green Hills, and they were too cute. I love the mid-century modern aesthetic, and I think that these cards just really fit the bill. They are extremely large for the Normand cards, which tend to be very small. But, without this deck, I would not have learned this system, and I would not have gotten into the cards. It comes with a book, and this is how I learned how to read cards and, get into cartomancy, basically. So I coupled this with a lot of YouTube tutorials, and eventually I did make my own Lenormand deck, which is free for download up on my website. Do I use this? Not so much. They're quite impractical because they're so large. But if you have a lot of space and if you're just learning, I think that these guide phrases are a wonderful way to learn the Lenormand system. This is non-threatening. It's too cute, and also not badly priced. Here is the Zombie Tarot. When I first started learning tarot myself, I got a copy of this at Fully Booked. It's extremely well designed and well packaged. And let me tell you, I had a very hard time learning the court cards in the beginning, and it was actually this guidebook that helped me distinguish the pages from the knights, from the queens, and the cups. Okay, so let's pull it out. It's so well designed, but I would have to say that this is not great cardstock. In fact, that's what keeps me from using this all the time, because I think that if you do shuffle this deck, you're gonna end up with very dog-eared cards because they're not laminated at all, which some people like, I guess, but I think you have to treat these cards with kid gloves. I love this vintage aesthetic, and look how well designed this is. They're very like old looking, and you have that a zombie. I'm not into zombies, and yet this appeals to me again because of the mid-century aesthetic. Obviously very different from the Fairy Tale Fortune cards, but still along the same lines. This is a great learning deck, I think, and especially if you're into zombies, then why not? The Zombie Tarot was produced by Quirk Books, which was also behind Housewives Tarot. Now, this I couldn't find on Fully Booked, and I ordered it from Amazon. Okay, so we're sticking to the 1950s theme, right? And I guess this would be the so-called feminine version of the Zombie Tarot because it's about housewives. And I think this is a very cheeky deck. So look at that, recipe cards. Look at the gingham cover. So well designed. We have the major arcana separated from the minor arcana. And again, a very underrated guidebook. I think that this can be the only little white book that you need in order for you to learn the tarot. It does it so well. If you love like that Mad Men 1950s type of thing, then you're gonna love this. Again, not the best cardstock, but you know what? This is priced very inexpensively, so you're not paying for paper quality here. It's matte. And so if you riffle shuffle with this, you're gonna get dog-eared cards, that's for sure. And you know what else I love about this? I love the the separation of colors. So we have the cups, which is blue, the wands, which is like kind of a goldish, like marigold, and then we have swords, which is red, and pentacles, which are 8. So again, vintage aesthetic. Love the gingham. I love the recipe book. This was so inventive, and I think, you know, at the time when this came out, tarot wasn't like still like super mainstream as it is now, and so this was definitely way ahead of its time, I think. So comes with a wonderfully built box as well. Like, this is pretty solid, and it's cheeky, it's fun. If you like humor with your tarot, then this is for you. These I'm gonna bunch together because they're all produced by Inner Hue. And yeah, I have a long story with this. I had the first editions of this, but I sold them in a couple of years ago in a sale I did, because I don't know, I was like way into collecting when these came out, and I just had backups upon backups, and I realized I didn't need all of them. So the first set of cards that they came up with was the Connected and Free Oracle deck. So you see I have 2 versions of them. I was actually gonna sell these already because I don't really use them, but I checked eBay and I think they fetch a pretty hefty price. So I was like, okay, nope, I am not gonna sell these because they're worth a lot right now, and I don't know, I think Inner Hue will reproduce them, so that's gonna bring the price down eventually, I think, but I'm gonna hold on to these. So I think this came out like about the time the Wild Unknown came out, and this style was very, very popular, kind of you know, watercolor, illustrative, bohemian, very quite modern, I think. And these cards are really, really well made. They're very stiff. The first edition of this wasn't that great, and so that's why I ended up selling it. Like the card stock was not the one, but this one's good. This is the second edition of Connected and Free. So this is an Oracle deck, and this is the 3rd edition. So it's similar but not. Like, this one's different. There are a couple of different cards, but as you can see, a lot of it's the same. And you know, I did get to use this quite a bit when, you know, it was like what, 2014, 2015, but I don't know, I feel like times have changed, and my aesthetic preferences have changed as well. Soon after the Connected and Free decks came out, the Lumina Tarot came out, and again, this was the 1st edition, or 2nd edition, and this was the 3rd. So again, I was collecting, so I had backups upon backups. The 3rd, I don't know why she did this, but you have this giant box. All of these come with guidebooks as well, and has a pouch, but you know, it's a little bit not fun to have the cards like slotted this way. But again, this has that very like 2014 style, very you know, illustrative, watercolory, nature-based. I know that there was a lot of beef with people. They did not like the court cards. I'm neutral when it comes to this, but yeah, a lot of people had words about this. This is one of my favorite 2 of Pentacles cards. So again, I was about to sell these off, but I checked eBay, and they cost quite a bit now, and so I decided to hold on to these. I did sell my first editions before, so yeah, they're very, there's not much of a difference between this and the other one, and they pair very well together. So if you like pairing like matchy tarot and oracle, then this is for you. Lumina Tarot is produced by Inner Hue, which is an Australian creator. And just in case you wanted to see the guidebooks, they're hefty. Did I read them? No, I didn't. But you know, if you're learning and you need assistance, then I think this would be great. So I have like 2 editions and 2 editions of these. Great for collectors, I would say, because of the price they fetch now. just because I discussed my Inner Hue decks, the Lumina, Tarot, Connected and Free, I'd like to mention Into the Woods by Lauren Aletta, which I think has since been rebranded and renamed. But this was a book that she wrote that has been so influential to me because it talks about the seasons and how we go through different seasons in life: spring, summer, fall. And when I came across this book, I was, I think, coming off of yoga teacher training and really learning about traditional Chinese medicine and how you can use these different perspectives of looking at your life and understanding yourself and what you're going through. And so I would say that this was such an important book to me. This is from the Illust Tarot. So this isn't a deck, but it is, I would say, a companion to my Inner Hue decks. Like, I could let go of all my decks if they weren't so expensive now, but I don't think I could ever let go of Into the Woods. And because we're talking about like the mid 2010s, I have to mention the Wild and Unknown Tarot. This is responsible for me really diving into tarot because it was the first deck that I really resonated with. And I know that that's a little bit controversial because this is a very nature-centric deck. So it's not traditional tarot actually. I mean, it takes off of those Rider-Waite-Smith themes, but kind of veers away from the typical. I had a very hard time learning the court cards here, and that's why I relied on the Zombie Tarot a lot, because like I could not tell the difference between the Daughter of Swords or the Son of Swords. I'm like, what? Yeah, so it took a while. So this is the very first edition. I bought this off Free People. It has this kind of wood grain looking background, which was removed in the next editions, and I just love this deck. It's precious to me because it was the first one I ever worked with. I was obsessed with tarot when this came out, and comes out with this fold out, which inspired my own deck, and very brief meanings. This comes with a guidebook, but I don't know where mine is. It's lost somewhere in the fire stuff. So this is the first edition. This was indie produced by Kim Krantz. I think that this is quite an important deck, I think, when we talk about more modern tarot. And then the second edition came up. This is still the independently produced version. So this was still sold by Kim Krantz herself. And okay, the changes here. So it still comes with the fold out, but it's a lot neater now, and then it folds out differently, I guess. It's not handwritten anymore. And then it comes with, an illustration at the back. And this is random, like you don't know what you're gonna get. So I bought this second edition because I was like super into collecting, and so it's the same cards, but the difference is the back. So this is a snakeskin back. I actually prefer the wood version, but I was collecting. I wanted both. They came out with a mass market edition after this second edition, and I sold mine because like, I really don't need three. And this is the Animal Spirit. I'm not sure if this became a mass marketed thing, but this was still independently produced. It went along with the second edition, and again, same format. It has that fold out. Now, when I was reading for people in person, they loved this deck. Me, I'm not sure I resonated with it completely. I'm not an animal lover. I'm not an animal hater, but I'm not an animal lover, so it was hard for me to connect. Like, I could not read without the guidebook, but this is like lovely. It's like the silver version of the tarot's backing, and I think this deck just really makes an impression with people, and that's why it got so popular. And I don't know, maybe I'll use it again, who knows. The next deck that Kim Krantz came out with was the Archetypes, and this is the box. And this is like a mass marketed thing already. I think she did have a relationship with Harper One. I'm not sure if That's still ongoing, but this is a round deck. And I think because it's a round deck, I hardly ever use it. But I wanted it because I'm a collector. So yeah. So every card here is representative of certain archetypes. So there are some crossovers with the tarot, I think. But largely this is largely like a different beast altogether. And I don't know if, like, when you use this in readings, like if the orientation can also play a role in your interpretation. I'm not sure. I was thinking of selling this, but because I wanted the complete set, I decided to keep it. So that's the archetypes deck, which I cannot say anything much about. When Kim Krantz was doing her independent stuff, she came out with spirit cloths. So I have two of them, the black and the white. Again, because I'm a collector. You know what I really love? Actually, more than the cloth, I love the guidebook of this. It's so great if, like, you still don't know how to read cards. And this Wild Unknown spread, I really love. And so it gives you a lot of ideas about how to use your cards. And I'm not gonna unfold this because it's kind of messy, but I would bring this with me to cafes, and just gives a whole look to your reading, the whole Wild Unknown vibe. I think these are iconic decks that kind of changed the landscape for all of us. Here's the archetypes guidebook. And so I'm kind of lazy when it comes to reading guidebooks, and maybe that's why I have not used this deck, but at least it's good to have a lengthy and really well produced guidebook too. Speaking of guidebooks, this is a bit of a flex. I actually got this autographed. My friend was at an event with Kim Krantz, and that's why I have this. So not parting with this. And since I'm going by creators, this is the Star Child, the Moon Child Tarot, and the Star Child Tarot Akashic by Noel. So this is the original deck, which I did not get when it first came out because it had been sold out. Luckily, she did a re-release, and so I got one. And so it comes with a very beautifully rose petal finished guidebook, but actually I don't really use the guidebook since I know how to use the tarot, I guess. Yeah, and I really love the Star Child Tarot because it's so fantastical, I would say. It's hard to read with if you're thinking about traditional tarot because it's like super different from what we're used to, I guess. So I mean, that could give you a lot more room to play with. There are a lot of Egyptian themes, I think, but that comes out, I think, later in the Moonchild. But I think there are the beginnings of like Egyptian themes, nature themes, and this is more like a fantasy deck for me. I'm not really into fantasy, but wow, I love the colors, I love the collages, and it's modern, a little weird, and I think it's so beautiful. I mean, I could not part with this, even if I don't use it that much. It's just, visually is so impactful, I think. Okay, so the first deck that I got by Noel was actually the Star Child Tarot Akashic edition. So when this sold out, she came out with this, which is kind of like this, but a little more lavender hued, a little softer. And I actually had like the bigger version, like this size, but I sold that because I prefer this like regular tarot size. This also comes with a guidebook, but I have it set aside. And these are borderless, which are, I think, they're more stunning that way. This Hierophant weirds me out, but anyway, I really love the look of this deck, but I prefer this one. I don't know, I think it's a color thing. That said, I wanted to sell this, but there were no takers in my fire sale, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it for myself. Maybe it's a sign that I need to have an Akashic version in my collection. and it just feels like a family when these are together. We are all stardust. And the third member of my Daniel Noel deck family is actually my favorite. I will never part with the Moonchild Tarot. Like, as a person, I think I'm more of a sun than a moon. But wow, I really love this deck. So here's where the Egyptian motifs really come out to play. And I remember Daniel Noel posting about her travels to Egypt when she was doing this deck, and she was so heavily influenced by everything that she saw there. I love this. This is actually Lindsay Mack, if I'm not mistaken, who you probably know. She's a very well-known tarot teacher. I've taken a couple of her classes as well. So these are just very like mystical, I would say. So very like space themed, but also like ancient civilization themed, but then with mixed with modern people. And I just love it. I mean, how could you not? I love how striking the colors are in this deck. I did read with it a lot. I actually had a lot more Daniel Noel decks, but I sold them because, you know what, I'm just more of a tarot person than an oracle person, and I didn't need all the decks. This is Cosmic Cousins. I remember I took a class with him but wasn't able to finish the whole thing. It was on all about astrology. Yeah, so we had one call. I remember like getting up at 6 a.m. to talk to him overseas. So there, and we have like matte gilding, which is so lovely. I cannot riffle shuffle this at all. I love the almost like Art Nouveau motif for this with all the Egyptian flavors there. I love the colors of this deck. It's completely a work of art, I would say. So here we go. You are the dance of light and shadow. Moving along with like same type decks. This is the Kripa Tarot, which I bought at Il Meneghello. I had this sent via post from Italy. It's very expensive, but these decks are pretty special, and I think they're like hand cut, handmade. And it's an edition of 700, so got 93. I bought this because it was created in 1978 and I was born in 1979. I love the Sesame Street look of these cards. Like, I don't know if I could actually like read with these for real. I mean, I guess I could, but like there are no labels, so you're gonna have to be very, very familiar with your cards in order to read with these. I mean, the tower, look at that. I just love this style. The star. And this is a Marseille deck, kind of like a modern Marseille deck. So, instead of having like the wands laid out, we have numbers, and I love the typography here. So like, okay, I'm talking about quartz, right? Like, how do you can tell it's a knight because there's a horse, but honestly it's just a little bit confusing. So you have to know this very, very well, I think, to be able to read with it. But as a collector, I could not pass this one up. It's extra special because it's like it's my generation, I guess, because when I was born. Lovely signature. There you go. The Pentacles always has like one of the special looking cards, and I guess it's the ace for the Kripa Tarot. And so yeah, the item is created by hand, and gotta love a handmade deck. So this was like gonna be my only Il Meneghello deck, but I did travel to Milan in 2017, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna buy myself a deck from Il Meneghello at Il Meneghello. And I actually met him, and sadly he has passed away, but I'm so glad that we shared a moment at the little shop. Even though he could not speak English and I could not speak Italian, we were able to communicate, and I told him that I wanted this particular deck, which is very like medieval looking. Like, I don't think this is actually like a usable deck because it's just so inconveniently sized, but they're so beautiful. I think like you know, they're medieval, but they're also very modern looking in a way. You get what I'm saying? These are like in very, very thick paper. Like you could not shuffle this at all. But it's so beautiful. I love like these tones, these dark purples and blues, and it's just like reminds me of going to a museum, you know, and just looking at artwork from centuries ago. So this is the second edition, made in 2013. Again, these are all handmade. This is called the Corte de Tarocchi. That's how you pronounce it. I would never sell these decks because they're so special, and you know they're handmade, you know, and they're Italian. Like how can you go wrong? So this is a bit of an embarrassment, but not. I'm not guilty for this pleasure of mine. I love Marisa De La Pena. I love her decks so much, and she came out with a Circo Tarot at a time when I was very, very into tarot collecting. So this is an independently produced deck, which is, I don't know, if I go by the name Circo, you know, it's kind of circus themed because we do get like circus looking cards a bit and not, but this was one of like my formative decks. I would say I learned tarot because I used this so much. I used it for readings for other people, I used it for myself, and I just love the artwork so much. Yeah, so this was heavily used, and it came in this green pouch that I kind of destroyed out of sheer use, and it comes with just a basic little white book, which I think is enough for you to go on when you're still learning. And you know how charming is that? You know, you have like yarn for the binding, and you know it's independently produced, and that's what I'm all about. These are like quite large cards, you know, but I think that it serves the Circo Tarot to have them be so big because like the art is just incredible. And so because I am quite a collector, I wanted all of them. When Marisa released the second edition with a hollow backing, I had to have it because I like backups. And you know, I've sold a lot of backups since, but I cannot bear to part with this. So this is special because it has that backing that's different from the first edition. Like I don't use this. This is like definitely something that just stays inside my room and I would never take out because I it's so special. It's really so special. And Marisa has since like moved on to other, you know, forms of art, and I know like she went through a lot of intensive studies, and she's working with food and cakes, I think. You know, but I will always come back to the Circo Tarot. I don't know like why this appeals to me like so much. Maybe it's because you know, as a Filipino, like we do have like we also have like Spanish influence in our culture, and there are a lot of similarities I feel between the illustrations here and like what we have here in the Philippines. Okay, so we have the Circo Tarot, which ended up becoming a mass-produced deck called How to Deal. But before it became mass-produced, I was able to snag the indie version of it. So Tarot for Everyday Life. The Circo Tarot has very similar looks to this, but there are some cards that were different. So this is a lot smaller. Not a lot, but it's a little smaller, like friendlier to shuffle, I would say. So now this time it comes with a top box, but it also comes with this pouch that's tie-dyed, which is so charming. So again, it's like kind of the same. There are some cards like this, I think. I'm not sure. There are some cards that are slightly different, and How to Deal actually became a book, and there was a book and deck set that we would sell at Urban Outfitters. I did not get that. It was independently produced, and it's nowhere to be found now on the internet, and that's why I am so chuffed that I still have my How to Deal indie version. I don't know how much this would probably cost now because it's out of print, and I feel so lucky to have this collection that I am never ever gonna sell. Okay, so I think this is like a little known fact that Marisa came out with two other decks apart from the Circle Tarot, which she is like known for, and this is the Persephone Tarot. I don't know a lot about Greek and Roman mythology, but I did read like all the classics. So yeah, this comes with a guidebook. Actually, let me get the guidebook, which I think is super helpful because it like walks you through the basics. I don't like it doesn't overwhelm you with information, which I like in a guidebook. Like I don't like super lengthy things, and so yeah, it gives you a good background. It's a black and white deck. If you're in the mood for black and white readings, and how lovely are those backings, right? I love that, the angularity of everything. If you're in a Hercules mood, this is great for you. But I think my heart just really just goes to the Circle Tarot. But I had to have this because I just love her art so much, so much. Had to have everything, and finally Marisa created this Strange Lands Oracle, and the box of mine is so wonky because this has been so used and so well loved. I love this Oracle deck, and you know what else I love about it is the quality. The paper of this cardstock is a lot different than the Circle Tarot and the Persephone. I don't know why. I love the size. I love this like bridge sized, I think, card deck, and this is so cheerful. Again, modern, very like whimsical. I love the colors. This just like totally speaks to me. And it also comes with a guidebook. And I was messaging with Marisa very recently, and she said she still uses this deck every single day. And you know what? I don't blame her because like it is a gem. Truly, I am so happy that I still have this in my possession, even if the box is falling apart. There you go. So it was produced in 2017. And this is my Marisa De La Pena collection. And you know what? She was so nice. Like I remember like when I ordered these backups, I think I ordered this along with this. And it came in such a beautiful box. And she said her abuela, her grandmother, was the one who packed it, and it came with like so many like decorations. I won't ever forget that because it was such a beautiful experience unboxing that. So Marisa, if you're watching this, I won't ever forget. That was so special, that box that you sent. Okay, so let's talk indie decks. The Saki Saki Tarot is one of the first decks that I bought like from an independent artist, and like this was like I think from Israel, if I'm not mistaken. Monica Cleosakis is from there, and it came in the post. Manila, the Philippine post is not super reliable, but after I received this, I was like, okay, I think it's safe to start ordering decks online. And this is so old, that's why I stuck some washi tape there. And the first editions came signed, and I had to tape it down because everything was falling apart. And this was a DIY box. I know that it came like spread out, and you had to like fold it in yourself, which is so cute. Good karma. Monica Cleosaki is so nice. She sent me a bunch of magnets. I remember when I asked her if she had like a spare box for me to put my cards in, because this was like totally falling apart, but I was able to restore it. And yeah, she sent me a spare box, and along with that, a lot of magnets, which are still up in my house. So this was a formative deck for me because I really learned a lot with this. I talked on my podcast about how I would bring the guidebook of this deck with me as I was taking writing classes in Ayala Museum, and on breaks I would go through that book. I was taking French classes also at the time, and I would take my book with me and read it during our breaks. I love this deck so much. So I think after going through my collection, you do see that I have a preference for like very bright colors, very non-traditional ways of depicting the tarot. So the book that comes with this is called Playing with Symbols, and it is a hefty book. But again, this really helped form my own, I guess, my own understanding of the tarot. And like, what a fun way to learn, right? With cards like this. So I know that she's doing like NFTs now, and there's also a re-release of this deck. I thought it would be a completely new deck, but apparently it's this deck with a couple of cards changed. So yeah, I think I won't be getting that because I have the original, and you know, this one is well worn and very close to my heart. Okay, next indie deck is the Celebrity Goddess Tarot deck by Faye Orlov, who did an illustration for me. I commissioned an illustration for her recently, and so nice. Okay, if you like pop culture, you're gonna love this deck because, you know, we have you know, people we know, we're familiar with as the archetypes of the tarot. And when I started doing like birth chart readings before we had the No Filter Woo deck, this was one of the decks that I used in those readings, yeah, when I didn't have like my own decks yet. So I think this isn't for everyone because not everybody will like the pop culture stuff. There's also not a lot of explanation, so you're gonna have to like figure it out yourself, like why Faye chose those certain people to go on certain cards. And I know there's been like more editions of this after the first one, but you know, I'm quite happy with this. I love like the very light blush color, like millennial pink, but like very desaturated. I love it. 2017, so the year where I was still collecting a ton of decks. Next we have Small Spells Tarot by Rachel Howe. I love this deck. I love Rachel's understanding of the tarot and how she makes it accessible to us. So again, a black and white deck. She did come out with a colored version of this, which I always wrestle with. Like every year I go visit the Small Spells website and ask myself, is this the year that I'm gonna finally, that we're gonna, the New York Times, we're finally gonna get the colored version. I haven't caved. She's also come out with a cloth, and that's also in my cart, and I still haven't decided. But I think that Small Spells really strips down the tarot to something that we can understand as modern individuals. And you know, I love decks that make the tarot a lot friendlier and easier to understand. This comes with a book. I think you can get the book separately. So I like that it's very brief because I don't have time to read a ton of text. And of course we get like, you know, standard spreads and stuff. So nice to have, not essential to me. Rachel is also like into astrology, and I love reading her posts. I think she runs a subscription astrology club as well. Next up, we have the Mesquite Tarot, which I backed on Kickstarter, if I remember right. This comes with a book, and I cannot find the book anywhere. It comes with a book as well as a pouch. I love this deck, and I am not gonna part with it because of its simplicity. Like, look at those stripped down colors, and it's so simple and yet very like impactful. I think this is a travel deck for me, although I haven't traveled with it, but you know, in my head this is something that I would bring with me, like if I were, you know, on a plane or something, because it's just so handy and it's just beautiful. Like I love those pastels. I mean, while I like bright colors, I can also appreciate a good pastel. So if you like simple, if you don't need a lot of, frills, then this is the one for you. I also like how she's taken the court cards into leader, knower, novice, and student. Although, it might take a while for you to figure out what's what, like which one's this is obviously the king, queen, and knight and page, but that can be a little bit confusing if you're used to more general terms. I'm not sure if they came out with like different editions of this, but I think this was the first one, and I really love it. This one I got just because I like Jenny Lewis, and it's not an actual tarot deck, but it's nice promotional material, it's nice merch. I know Jenny Lewis from Troop Beverly Hills, one of my favorite movies when I was growing up. I mean, you could use this as an oracle deck, I guess. There, Troop Beverly Hills. But I think this is just cute merch. Like, I wish Taylor Swift would come out with a tarot deck. I mean, how awesome is that? I love the illustrations. I think I got this off her actual merch, her official merch store. So if you're a Jenny Lewis fan and you don't know, I found out about this through Carrie Mallon, I remember, and I messaged her saying, oh, thanks for posting this, because I would not have known that she had a tarot deck. So let's talk about our standard decks. I mean, our traditional decks, the ones that I think as students we all need in our collection, just because. I have one in a bag. Okay, this was the very first deck I ever bought. This is the Aleister Crowley Thoth Tarot. Quite a controversial person in the tarot sphere, but again, I love Lady Frida Harris's drawings. This was from the 1930s, I think. It took a while for this to be finished. The Thoth is not your mother's tarot deck. It is very esoteric, has a lot of like Kabbalistic symbols, astrological symbols, and so if you're a nerd and you're into that, then this will be great for you. There's just so much like, it's like rich in symbolism. I am not that person, and so when I first bought this, I was like, what the heck? I could not understand it at all, but I loved the drawings. And so in an attempt, like years after, I bought this like maybe in the late 90s, 98, 97, when I got interested in the wild unknown, I pulled this out of my drawers and said, okay, I'm gonna try again. And my way of trying again was to cut the borders of this and etch them in Sharpie, copper, I think, or bronze. And they look better this way, but I'm like, what? I still cannot, for the life of me, read with this, but I cannot let go of this deck because it's my first deck. Like, how could I, right? I bought this off the very first branch of Power Books along Pasay Road. Pasay Road, I think. If you know, you know. So I don't even have the box or the book of this anymore. I just keep it this way. And so when I went to London a couple of years ago, I said, okay, I'm gonna buy it again, and have what it looks like originally. And I bought this at like the oldest esoteric bookshop in London, which was a treat for me to go to. And so this is how it looks originally, and so I cut off the borders and rounded the edges. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna read with this, but I just want to have it in my collection just because it's an important deck. Aleister Crowley scares the bejesus out of me. Like, I watched like a documentary about him on YouTube, and I was like terrified. Okay, this is my first Rider Waite Smith deck, and because I wanted it to match my borderless cloth, I trimmed the borders off as well. And there's no more box, and that's why it's in a Ziploc. And yeah, so I trimmed it, and I tried to edge it, but it faded. It's very hard to deal with sharp corners, might I say. So this was the
I don't know, this was like the cheap version of the Rider-Waite-Smith. I bought it at Fully Booked for like, I think 700 pesos, I would say. So I did learn with this. This was my first Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But because I love indie decks, I don't really use it a lot. But, okay, so when I was collecting, this came out. The Smith-Waite Tarot deck, which I guess puts more emphasis on Pamela Coleman Smith, the illustrator. And because, you know, like she didn't get her due, I guess, when she created this deck. And so I love this because it's like a softer version of the one that I have. And I bought this off of Amazon, I think. And yeah, it's just the colors, they say, are closer to the original version. I don't know, and I guess I don't care. I mean, it's just that the yellows are not as striking as the other deck, and that's why I like this. For a minute, I had a borderless version of this because I was just crazy about collecting, but I ended up selling it because, like, I mean, for one, I don't really use it, and so I don't need, like, a ton of versions. Lastly, I have the Tarot de Marseille, the Nicholas Conver version. I don't know anything about Marseille, I mean, except what I learned on YouTube channels, but I thought that it was important for me to have, you know, like a traditional classic version. And this seemed to fit my color preferences, I guess. And so these are, I would say, like, I would call them like my learning decks. The Thoth, Smith-Waite, and the Marseille. Moving on, let's talk about mass market decks. So I was thinking about selling this. There were no takers. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep it. I learned about this because a couple of YouTubers that I was watching before loved it, and I think the English version like fetches like a ton of money, but I got the German version because there was no English version available. I went on Amazon, German Amazon site, and you know, this looks like the Saki Saki Tarot kind of. I just love these kooky, very fun, very, I don't know, children's storybook looking illustration. So I had this book when I was growing up called Hepzibah. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but Hepzibah really looked like this, and I think that's why the Kitty Kahane Tarot spoke to me. It just reminds me of my childhood and the books that I used to read. So it comes with this guidebook, which I obviously cannot read because it's in German. So, there. How fun, right? And you know what I hate? When the box like has that paper inside and it's just so finicky. So I threw it out, and this is the box. So not selling this, keeping it in my collection. Okay, the very first Rider-Waite-Smith based tarot deck I bought is the Tarot of Jane Austen. All my friends know that I simp for Jane Austen. This box is so beat up. That's why I put some washi tape just to protect it. I bought this in Fully Booked in Rockwell. There was just one copy. I had no idea that this was an out of print deck. A few years ago when I was doing a sale, I checked how much it was, and it's like 9,000 pesos or something, and it's even more expensive now apparently. That's nuts. So my friend Patty was able to get herself a copy, and I actually scored a backup of this as well. Yeah. So you know what I don't like about this is that it uses it used certain movies to draw the archetypes, and I don't like that it used the Laurence Olivier Pride and Prejudice because the costumes are all wrong and not of the era in that adaptation. This is Lady Susan, which is a little known story of Jane Austen. So Persuasion, I love Jane Austen so much, so it just means a lot to me that I can like pick out certain scenes and know exactly what they're about. That said, so I bought this for like 900 pesos, I think, and excuse me, and I found out later on that this actually has a box set version. I was able to get the book from the box set secondhand off of some website, I think. And this really goes in depth into what the cards mean and the symbolism and like, you know, the archetypes from the actual books. So I think that it's important to have this book when reading this. That said, you can't find this anywhere, and I looked high and low for this, and I'm happy that Patty was also able to get a version of this. I mean, I guess you just have to like be really good about searching, but because this was like my first non-Thoth tarot deck, this is always going to be an important deck to me. And I mean, a bonus is just how much it costs now. It's a collector's item. So yeah, love Tarot of Jane Austen. I think there's a more updated version of this that's also a mass market deck. Okay, here we go. Dreaming Way. When I was letting go of my cards, I sold a lot of my mass market decks, but not the Dreaming Way because this is just so pretty. This was illustrated by a Korean artist, I believe, Kwon Shina, and it really does have that like very, I don't know, Korean aesthetic. I went to Korea a lot, like in the early 2010s, and you know, in the little boutiques and stationery shops, there were a lot of like postcards and artwork, and they all had this very dreamy, watercolory aesthetic, which I love. This is a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck, and a few years after this came out, the Dreaming Way Lenormand came out. And I had a couple of Lenormand decks that I did sell because like, I don't know, I wasn't really using them, but I'm not gonna sell this because it pairs so well with the tarot deck. And sometimes I like to do like tarot Lenormand combination readings. So here you go. It's the same. I like the Lenormand size. It's not crazy big like my Fairy Tale Fortune cards. And yeah, I think this is a match made in heaven. If they were ever to come out with a Dreaming Way Oracle, that would be perfect. I'm not sure if there is one since I've been out of the scene for so long, but if there were, I would probably buy it. The Fountain Tarot came out shortly after the Wild Unknown Tarot was like really gaining popularity, I think when it was in its second edition. And this is a first edition. And one of the best parts of the Fountain Tarot, I think, is its guidebook because it's compact, but you know, it packs a punch. The Fountain Tarot is beautiful. They're like based on oil paintings. They have, I think they were one of the first to do gilded edges, which was like, wow, that's so pretty. These are all oil paintings. And I remember when they started this, like they had a video of the whole process and it just looked amazing. I know that they also sold off those oil paintings eventually. She reminds me of Baby Spice. I don't know, Emma Bunton. My friend Ouija loves this deck, and I mean, I can see how it can suit certain personalities. It's a little too soft for me. Like, you know how I like, you know, Kitty Kahane or Saki Saki, very bold colors, and this is quite a departure from that. I was thinking of selling this. Actually, this is my favorite card out of this deck, the Six of Swords. I was thinking about selling this because like I don't really use this. This kind of reminds me of like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson type. I don't know. But because it is a first edition, and you know, since coming out with this, they have gone mass market, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna keep it. I don't use it, but I'll keep it because I don't know, it's beautiful. It's so well crafted. I mean, the box of this is beautiful, and I think they did a good job with the mass market version as well, because I think it's almost the same as the independently produced one in terms of packaging and boxes. I mean, how can you say no to some hollow, right? Going back to some indie produced deck, this is the Golden Thread Tarot by Tina Gong, who runs the Labyrinthus app. This box is is very heavy. It's deceiving in its size and its looks, but it's heavy. I love like they look like circuitry, like in a computer. This is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's an adaptation, and the thing about this, it's plastic. So let me show you. It's so bendy. So I got this at a time when my dad was in the hospital a lot, and I remember bringing this to the hospital and reading for family. And I remember my dad was asleep, and I don't know if he was listening to my readings for my family, but like they were all pretty shell-shocked at how accurate the readings were. And there were types of readings where I didn't ask them what they were going through. I just like blindly read for them, and it worked. And like a few months after that was my first experience reading with this deck. I took it with me. I was on a junket to Singapore, and I met up with Patty, my friend, and I remember we were at a kopitiam, and I brought these, and it was perfect because these are waterproof, and like the food was and the drinks were getting in the way, but these survived. And I actually like how this smells. I don't know what material or what process they used to create these cards, but I love how this smells, how solid it feels in the hand, and how I'm just gonna use these forever, I think. Tina Gong is amazing and talented. Next up, Cards of Chaos and the Black Lily Tarot. But bonus, I have another deck tucked in here called the Metro Tarot. These are by an artist called Aya Rosen, who I follow on Instagram, and whose drawings are so amazing. So she used Metro cards to create a Major Arcana card. If I could draw, I wish this could be my style. There was this tarot deck called the Collective Tarot, and it was a collaborative deck, and it went out of print, and I did not get a copy of it. I know Jess Roller has one, and I'm always on the lookout for anybody who's selling it. Unfortunately, I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know what's going on in the marketplace, but this is the vibe. I think it shares a similar aesthetic to the Collective Tarot. So Aya Rosen has a little white book. The illustrations veer away from your traditional tarot, so this isn't something I would rely on for an off-the-cuff reading, and I'm not prepared. This is something I would sit and journal with at home and use to read for myself. These were produced by Game Crafter, so you order it from that website, which does print on demand, and yeah, they send it over to your address. I love the size of this, and just Aya Rosen is just a great artist, and she even does embroidery, and I think she does cross stitch projects. She's an amazing artist to follow on social media. She also did an oracle deck, and I like how she calls it imaginary tarot cards. And I remember, story time, I lost one of the cards of this deck, and I don't know where it went because I don't take these out with me. I feel like they slipped under my cabinet that I couldn't move because it's too big. But then when we had the fire, I remembered that card that I feel slipped under, and nope, it wasn't there. So I don't know where that card went, but it was this card. And I wrote to Aya and told her, hey, I lost one of the cards in the Card of Chaos. Is it possible to just order a one-off? And she said yes. And so, yeah, that's why I won't forget this. And it's funny how I remember she commented when I posted my collection photo on Instagram. She goes, hey, I made the cut. And I'm like, yep, I'm never selling this. I know I had 2 copies and I sold, the first pair. I love this, Passion and Struggle. And yeah, I told her I'm not letting go of my cards because just because of that one card that got lost, and she helped me get it back. this means a lot. So I really love, the relationships that we can strike with these independent creators, especially because these cards came out at a time when nobody was really talking about tarot. And so I feel like, the bonds that we made as readers, as enthusiasts, and as creators were very, 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 very strong. Okay, for other creators that I love, Holly Simple. She is so cool. Like, wow, can I be you when I grow up? Her decks are just so fun. So look at these motifs, right? I mean, they are just so distinct and unique. Simple, but not. I would never let go of these cards because I feel like they're just so fun to read with, and I particularly like what she wrote here. The tarot does not act as a fortune teller. Use the cards to bring awakening and awareness. Willingness to experience truth is the first step toward growth and healing, and that's how I view the cards. One of the things I really loved about this was this in-depth summary of all the cards. How fun, right? And you just need this like one card to be able to interpret these cards. These are super slippery. I remember like bringing this out to cafes, for example, and reading, and the cards would like fall off the table. So yeah, word of warning if you're ever gonna get a copy and if this is still the material they use, but it just feels so nice. It's slippery on the table, but it feels amazing. Okay, more than her tarot deck, I really love the Fuzzy Prism Oracle deck, and this was the first version. I know she came out with another version of this, and this gets a ton of use from me. I'm gonna get holographic here. I just love the choice of words and how creepy but fun the illustrations are. They're a great match to the Holly Simple Tarot, yes, of course, but like on their own, like I would use this a ton. I was making love readings when I first got this deck, and this was the one. This was my go-to, and I love this box. It's just so unique. I mean, people do this now, but this was like a pioneer. Okay, this was a recent purchase from Holly Simple. And the Amulet Friends Oracle, I think, takes a lot of inspiration from South American culture. It does come with a pouch, but I don't use it. So we get a guidebook, which is quite helpful. So you still see familiar, her style, but it takes a lot of patterns, I think, and even the layout, I think it's like very, very South American, like indigenous culture, which I love. I think we do have a lot in common as Filipinos with these other cultures, I think. And I love the keywords. I don't get to use this a lot because I think I got this at a time when I was just really using my own decks, and now that I have my collection back with me, I'm just so inspired to start diving into these old decks that I've had and haven't had time to really use. I love collecting all the decks of certain creators. So yeah, I'm a completionist in that regard, and Holly Simple is one of those artists whose decks I am just gonna keep collecting. So these cards also come with a guidebook. This is the Holly Simple Tarot guidebook. And what I like about this deck is this book is that it just gives you like the process of how she put everything together. And as someone who makes decks myself, I think it's just nice to get like a sneak peek into somebody's thought process and how creativity stirs for them. this is the Dark Days Tarot and the Mother Tarot. The Dark Days Tarot came first, and I bought this. I was convinced because I remember Bakara Wintner of Everyday Magic. She loved this deck so much, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it. These are by Ren McMurdo, sorry. I tried, she's a Seattle-based artist if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, but I remember going to Seattle and I was like, I want to buy the deck in Seattle, but then I couldn't find it, or like the copy was kind of tattered, so I just bought it off the website instead. And it's a square deck, which makes it different. The majors are in white and then everything else is in black. And yeah, I think there's like, I have moods for this deck. If I'm feeling a little bit, very emotional and shadowy, which is not very often, this is something that I would turn to. It's gilded silver, but this isn't hard to hold. So a few years after she came out with the Dark Days Tarot, she came out with the Mother Tarot, and I think this is more my bag. I remember buying this, like, I think right before COVID happened. She was about to launch it, or maybe either right before or during the pandemic. So this is more my style because of the colors, I would say. Again, I'm more of like a light than a shadow person. And this is a queer tarot deck, which I appreciate. I mean, it's also heavily, I think, on the feminine side, I guess, but I like how out of this world this deck is. And actually, I do resonate a lot with the descriptions she had in the guidebook. And I mean, it's a colored guidebook moment here. It's expensive to produce this on your own, so like kudos to people who go that extra mile. Whenever I read for myself with this deck, I would get extremely meaningful readings. Something about the cards, the images, and the symbolisms discussed in the book just really resonated with me. And so if you're into divine feminine stuff without being overly traditionally feminine, then the Mother Tarot is quite a ride. I mean, look at that, right? It's so bold and it's beautiful. It's bold and beautiful. There you go. If you like mermaids, that's fun. But I think these two are like essential to have. It's very yin yang. I cannot talk about my tarot collection without mentioning Spirit Speak. Can you tell that I love Mary Elizabeth Evans's work? I have all her decks. Okay, interesting story. I first encountered the Spirit Speak Tarot at a boutique in Venice, in LA, I think. And I really wanted it, but the copy was dog-eared, and I'm very finicky about how my decks feel and look. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy it online. But I remember seeing this at that boutique and I was like, I have to have this deck. It's just amazing. So kind of like Small Spells Rachel House deck, it's black and white. It's very doodle centric. When I first got this, they had opened one of my favorite coffee shops, Craft, right beside my house. And I would spend afternoons at Craft just poring over the illustrations and then reading the very succinct descriptions and just journaling about this. This is how I learned the tarot. This is one of my, again, formative decks. It would be this, Wild Unknown, and Saki Saki. This really helped, and Zombie Tarot. These really helped shape my understanding of the cards. I love how compact it is. Again, that's always a plus for me. Comes in a 2-piece box. Alright, shortly after this was released, she came out with a vessel. And like the Fuzzy Prism Oracle, this was a staple. I would bring this to all the readings I did, and everybody loved the cards. These were so memorable. Nobody has ever forgotten a vessel oracle card. I am HO. It's not just the doodles and the pinks and the very light blues or greens, but I think it's really the choice of words. There is something about this deck that just like sinks deep into your subconscious. And that's why I love it and why I will never ever let it go. Okay, so these were the first two. And then the next like wave of Spirit Speak decks came with the Divina tarot deck, which is like very similar to the Spirit Speak but different, because I think the energy of this is very soft compared to the first deck, and you can see it in the illustrations. It's pencil drawings. It's very, I mean, it's same but different. I just feel like this is a lot softer to the eye visually. And I don't know what it is. Maybe because I studied so much with this deck that the Divina wasn't as, I guess, as resonant with me. I can read with it. You know how it is when you learn the cards by heart, you can actually read with any tarot deck regardless of what it looks like. The cards are just like symbols for what you already know. But I always prefer this. The thing is, I cannot get rid of this. I do not want to sell it because I am a completionist and I am such a fan of the Spirit Speak brand that I cannot bring myself to let go of this even if I don't really use it. Okay, alongside the Divina Tarot deck, she released the Iris deck. And this is like massive. It's a lot of cards. It's pretty, kind of 70s, 60s looking. But it's so pointed, I think. Like, Suppression of a Star Being by Hands Unworthy. Like, this takes a while to understand and to ingest. And I don't think this is a card that I could bring with me, on like a regular reading, or if I'm reading for a friend, and be able to come up with interpretations like off the bat. This is more for me. It's more for journaling, more for personal work. It's more like just pull one card and that's it, because there's just so much you can glean from these words. And to her credit, she did include a very hefty guidebook. I like when guidebooks have pictures as well. So that's good. But again, like this second wave of her decks, while pretty and while I think they add value to my collection, they aren't my faves. It's still like these first two. And that changed with the third group of decks, because the Apparition tarot deck is, I think, one of the biggest keepers in my collection. I love this deck so much. And again, it comes with a book. They're bigger this time. They're gilded in gold. One reason why this deck is so precious to me is I love how it feels in the hands. I love this sound it makes. It's a sensory delight, this deck. So again, it's very simple. I think that's, on brand for Spirit Speak. But this time, it reminds me, it's very inner child for me, because it reminds me of like, marker coloring, which I love. That was my my preference when I was a kid. I love drawing in markers. So I love this deck. I think it's a nice refresh and update of the Spirit Speak because it's colored. And I love how big it is. Some cards I don't like big, like the Star Child, but this I really like that it's big. And I think that if you're a beginner, the Apparition is actually a good way to dip your toes into tarot. After Apparition, she came out with the Road to Nowhere Oracle deck. And just as Holly Simple, I think, had like South American or Southern influences, this is the same. So maybe there was like a moment I don't know what was going on like societally or culturally that this kind of like came to the forefront. I love it. The thing is, like the Iris deck, this is not something I can just read off of and know right away. There are collages and I use collage, but like this isn't, I don't know why it's not like really singing for me, but I would never let go of this deck because I love her artwork so much, and because I feel like I will eventually need to read with this deck. I don't know. I think it's not having its moment right now, but it will. And so Road to Nowhere is just, waiting in the sidelines. Okay, one of the newest decks I got, I think during or pre-pandemic, I'm not sure, is the Pixie deck. And this is round, like the Archetypes deck of the Wild Unknown. It comes in that now popular like rose petal finish, and it also comes with a guidebook. Always appreciate those. Now, I like the packaging because instead of using cardboard, this is foam, and so the cards don't move around and it doesn't get destroyed because of use. So these are like rose petal finished cards. They're gilded in blue. And again, like, I don't know. It's not time for me to read with this deck. I don't know why. Maybe because it's round, maybe because of the imagery, maybe because I really like Spirit Speak for its doodles. But I feel like given some time, this is gonna be extremely meaningful and useful to me. So the Pixie Oracle deck is just waiting in the wings for now. Another collector I love is Dame Darcy, and this is one of the most beat up tarot decks that I have because I literally took it everywhere with me. Just look at how frayed the edges is. This is the Dame Darcy Mermaid's Tarot deck, which I keep in a Traveler's Factory bag because the original bag is just like ripped to shreds. This is a mermaid themed deck. I think for a while some people had problems with this. I don't know what the issue was, but I love this deck. And I remember Kelly Ann Maddox talking about this deck. I think there were so many readers on YouTube before who just loved this deck, and that's why I bought it. Dame Darcy updated the deck, so I got a second edition, and this is like more like sepia toned, I think, and there were some cards that were changed. However, my relationship with the first edition is so cemented that I cannot bring myself to read with the second edition. It's nice to have, but you know how a well-worn deck just feels right in your hands? That's why this just means a lot to me, and usually it is the one that I pull if I'm gonna travel and I don't want to bring any other deck. Even if the Mesquite deck that I talked about earlier is small, I think this is still my go-to travel deck. I love the graphic novel-y type drawings. So recently she released the Dame Darcy Queen Alice Tarot. This is based on Alice in Wonderland, and I debated whether to sell this or not because I wasn't really using it, but I just want to keep it because I love her artwork so much. I'm not the biggest, like, I like Alice in Wonderland, but I'm not, in love with it. So my relationship to the mermaids is different than my relationship with the Alice deck. Although I did read Alice in Wonderland, and so I can kind of pick out the scenes and the symbology. This is very much a deck that I keep because I love the artwork, and I mean it's packaged a lot better than the Mermaid Tarot is. That said, I still like the charm of an indie produced deck that nobody knows of, and that is so well worn. It just feels so right in my hands. Together though, I think they make a great pair. Christy Prokopiak, I think that's how you say it, created the Ilus Tarot, and I was so sold on this because I am a 90s girl. I was a teenager in the 90s, and so these just totally speak to me. From the backing to that very gritty, grungy style, and to the archetypes that are here. I mean, these are, I know most of them, some more than others, but like, I love reading with this deck, even though, you know, it's not like a Rider-Waite-Smith scenic deck. It's more a Marseille style, but for the people in it, especially my absolute favorite, Carrie Russell and Felicity, I would never give this up. I know that she rebranded this because there was a bit of an issue with its title, so now it's called the 90s, that 90s tarot, something like that. I got a second edition. She changed a couple of the cards, and because I am like, I love backups for decks that I just truly love and are independently produced. Christy came out with a Ritual Tarot, which is the Oracle counterpart. This is a photographic deck, which I don't always vibe with, but I mean, I think she's based in LA, or a lot of this was from LA. I love Los Angeles, so this is actually from the Fountain Tarot. I love Los Angeles and spent a lot of time visiting there when I was growing up, so I don't know, I just resonate with this so much. You could read blindly with these cards, but I like that it comes with a little book, and I used this so much that I was afraid that they were kind of coming off the binding already. But yeah, I was such a fan of Christy that I actually bought her little spiral guidebook, which I would say, like, also this inspired me to create my own little book for practical magic. So yeah, this was, I would say, like, not really part of my formative tarot years. See, she used the Spirit Speak and the Dark Days Tarot. Like, I wouldn't say this was like a formative deck, but I think I got this at a time when I was really thinking about doing my own thing already, and in that regard, this was like a big inspiration. And we have made it to my latest additions to my collection, as well as, I would say, my staples for at least this season in my life. So I'm gonna start with the mass market one, the Modern Witch Tarot deck by Lisa Sturl. This was the deck I took with me when our house burned, and I was so glad that the box was this sturdy, because that meant that the cards stayed protected. I really love this deck. It's Rider-Waite-Smith. I know not a lot of people vibe with it, which surprised me because I thought it would be very popular. So again, this is one of those heavily feminine decks. Like, there are women here, I guess, or women presenting people in this deck. But it's also a queer deck, which is nice, and nice to get these updates. I appreciate the Rider-Waite-Smith, but when done in this way, I appreciate it even more. These cards are glossy, and I think it would be difficult to riffle shuffle. I don't. I just do this. This comes with a mini hardbound book, which is quite delightful. And again, I think this is a pretty solid one if you're starting to dip your toes into tarot. I love this little card that it comes with. So when I moved, this was my constant companion, and I bought this off of Amazon, and yeah, I'm glad it survived the fire and was intact. I know, like, I had to like really clean it because it was really singed and dusty after I had saved it from the fire. To go with the Modern Witch Tarot deck, the Inquire Within deck was the one that I brought with me. Like, among all the decks, I needed to bring this with me. And I bought this because I had seen it online, but I was like, I'm not gonna add to my collection anymore. But then in 2019, I think that was in May, I went on a beach trip with my friend Macy, and she brought her copy. And she read for us using this, and I was like, okay, I need it. I need it. I love a black and white deck. I like, very simple sayings that say a lot without saying too many things. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is a staple. I can't go without this deck. This is by an independent creator. Worthwhile Paper is the company. And I don't know, maybe they're tired of me tagging them on Instagram because I always post my pulls from this deck. It's so beautifully created, and just, I like a simple talk box. And I just like how so many things can come off of something so simple. Okay, speaking of creators that I love, The Way Home Tarot by Baccara Wintner and can't remember her illustrator, Autumn something. Okay, when I got my collection back, this was my immediate go-to. Baccara Wintner is a foundational person to me. She was such an inspiration when I was starting to learn tarot. She was also starting her own thing, and she had written What the Fuck is Tarot and How Do I Do It? And this, I wish I had come across this book when I didn't know anything about tarot, because I don't know, I think that it captures the essence of tarot in the modern context so beautifully. And Baccara Wintner is like, I don't know, I mean, I don't know her personally, although I have had like exchanges with her online, and I think she's so smart, and I don't know, she's just so good at what she does. And this isn't necessarily the companion book to this, but it would help if you had the book, because this doesn't come with a guidebook. I don't know if they've come out with like new editions of this, but yeah, this first one doesn't have one. So this is very modern, I would say, and I think it's just a signal of how tarot can be useful to us across generations. And yeah, okay, 2 oracle decks she came out with in collaboration with other people. The first one was Postcards from the Liminal Space. So this was a collaboration with Christian Berry and Kaylee Christensen. And these were inspired by Morgan's Tarot, which is a 1960s or 70s deck that I had in my possession, but I sold off to a good friend, to Belle Yambao. So yeah, I really like black and white cards, I guess, and I think it's easier for me to read with these off the cuff. It does come with a guidebook, which I always use. Like, I don't think I would be so intimidated to read for other people using this, just because I think the themes are so easy to relate to, I think. And you don't need to, it's not a stretch to glean meaning from them. And then another set is Visions in the Liminal Space, and this is just Baccara Wintner with Kaylee Christensen. And this is one of the latest decks that I had gotten, I think pre-pandemic, and it continues on with the same themes, but same but different. So I'm still getting to know this. I know this a little bit more, but yeah, I read with both, especially when I use The Way Home Tarot. Alright, and on to my newest decks. These 3. Tarot de Marseille by Tanya Tickner, Moon Baby Tarot, and the Squid Cake Marseille Tarot. So this I got right before our fire, and she's a German artist, and I learned about her through Jess Roller's posting on Instagram. I am so interested in reading with Marseille cards right now, just because I don't know, I feel like, stripped away of the scenes of the Rider-Waite-Smith, you can really lean into your intuition. That's what I love. But I like these very whimsical illustrations. You will see that a lot of my decks look this way. I love the color palette. these decks are really, really thick. And Tanya actually hand cut them. She posted like some of her process photos and videos, and I was so amazed. She has a studio in Berlin, and right now she's working on a Rider Smith. So right now she's working on a Rider Smith weight deck that I cannot wait to have in my collection too. So I have very much stopped buying a lot of decks, but you know what? I will break my fast for an artist that I truly love. The Moon Baby Tarot was something I backed on Kickstarter, and it's a reinterpretation of the Hoi Polloi Tarot from the 70s. And I learned about the Hoi Polloi Tarot because, when I started collecting, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and the Hoi Polloi was one of those collector's items that everyone wanted. Again, I was born in the 70s, and so as with the Kripa Tarot, I will really resonate with something 70s themed. And Rider-Waite Smith is great, but I think it's done greater when it's in a palette that you love, in a style that you can really, really relate to. So I love that this is a classic, like kind of turned on its head. I'm so happy that they redid the Hoi Polloi. I love this green etching as well. And don't they look, they just look great together. These two. Love the color scheme. My newest and latest tarot deck was by Jess Roller herself, Squid Cake Marseille. Again, I'm just really into Marseille decks at the moment. I think that I will be reading with them a lot more from now on. Jess is such an inspiration to me. If you don't already know, like an old video of hers, I don't even think she has a channel anymore, just inspired my own Lenormand collage deck. And I guess that inspired my tarot deck too. So I would say she's an important influence to me. She's so talented. I love the colors, the pinks. Again, it looks so well coordinated with these two. And yeah. So I started reading with this for myself, and I was just so surprised at how well written and how relevant the guidebook is. If you're not used to reading with Marseille, I think this would help, because I think it eschews the usual Rider-Waite Smith interpretations and helps you like kind of broaden your horizons with other ways to see cards, especially when they're non-scenic. And you're relying on a lot more than just the Rider-Waite Smith. You're going more based on numerology and all of that. I always look at the Two of Pentacles when it comes to Marseille decks, because they're always a lot more special, I think, than the others. So yeah, this is what I'm working with at the moment, and you know what? It's been a trip.
So I think I'm losing my voice, but I hope that you enjoyed my walkthrough through my collection. I think I have less than 60 decks in my collection at the moment. This went down from a time when I was buying all the time. And I really am proud of how much I've been able to strip down my collection and be left with pieces that really mean a lot to me, and that I can truly read with, as well as a couple of decks that I'm not so aligned with, but also already cost quite a lot right now. So I'm happy about those two. So thanks if you stayed for this entire video, and talk to you again soon. Bye.